Last Christmas, I gave you a 3D tutorial in After Effects, and the very next day I received 9 dislikes. So today, in the spirit of Christmas, I'm gonna take you guys through my process of how I create that promo video that I used actually to promote my last tutorial. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this. I think so far I'm the only one who's brave and generous enough to do something like this. Well, anyways, let's get into it. Right, so as usual, we're gonna start out creating a new composition. We're gonna try and make it a square this time. I'm gonna do the basic 1080 by 1080. Probably drop this down to maybe 10-second animation. Boom. And now, right, so the next step is actually trying to find something that you can work on this tutorial with. For example, for me, I already got this sort of PNG image of the Adobe After Effects icon. But, you know, you can do this with anything that you want, like the last video. You can do this with SVG vector files, or you can try to find some PNG like this with some sort of transparency in the background. So the first thing that we're gonna do is to set up our background. So what I'm gonna do is head over to Layer, New, Solid. We just call this BG for background. Everything else looks fine. You don't need to mess around with the color. Hit OK, and over here to the Effect and Preset tab, type in gradient, add the gradient RAM effect over here to the background, and then we get these two handles over here for the two colors of the gradient. I'm just gonna drag this one out further a little bit, and the end color, I'm gonna take that and pick the color around here, since, you know, that's gonna give us a really nice color for the background. Get that really futuristic vibe over here. Next up, for the background, I'm gonna create a new layer, solid. I'm gonna call it grid. Again, in the effects and preset panel, I'm gonna find the grid effect down here under generate, drag the grid effect to that grid layer. And then we're gonna get a setup of grid. You can change the border size. Right now I'm just gonna put it to like maybe 3. Anyway, the effects will automatically create a a grid with proportionally perfect square for us. If you want to create a grid that is to your liking but also maintain the same sort of proportion, you can just either take this handle here and try and drag it like diagonally like this manually, or you can just add or take away each of these values over here inside of the corner property. So let's say maybe like -20 over here, and I'll add another -20 inside of that value as well, and there you go. For this grid over here, I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light, and then we got a pretty good blend of the white of the grid to the background over here. Kind of want this grid over here to peek out a little bit outside of the black, so I'm gonna drag this black value up until we can slightly slightly see, till we can just see out that grid layer. One thing we're gonna do before we move on is that we're gonna turn the grid layer into a 3D layer. In hindsight, this move was not applicable since Cinema 4D renderer does not allow layers to have their own blending mode. Therefore, you should not turn the grid 3D, as this move is known in the industry as a massive waste of time. Right, so we can now finally get to the more exciting part. We're gonna turn this logo 3D. And if you remember from my last video, using extrusion, we can actually extrude out vector and 3D path inside of After Effects. But if we're dealing with like a PNG picture like this, the best thing you're gonna have to do is, trace back the outline of the shape, maybe using Illustrator. Because of how simple the outline of this, this logo is, I'm gonna try and do it straight in After Effects. Just gonna hide the grid in the background a little bit over here. Head over to Layer, create a new shape layer. I'm gonna click and hold onto this tool, and I'm gonna navigate to the rounded rectangle tool over here. And while in the shape layer 1 over here, I'm gonna hold shift and double click on the rounded rectangular shape. And it's gonna create a perfect rounded square. And then, all you're gonna do is, drag it down, drag the size down, and try to line it up squarely with the original logo that we had. I'm just gonna call this one 3D back. That reminds me, I need to name my comp. I'm gonna call this main comp. I think Ben Marriott is watching me. So what I'm gonna do is click on this 3D back layer over here and hit T on my keyboard. That's gonna give me the option to change the opacity of the layer. So I'm gonna drop it down. So I'm gonna get a better look at where I'm going with this adjustment. So I'm gonna go to content, rectangle, and inside of the rectangle path over here, and click the constraint proportions over here. Thank you for the pop-up. And then drag it down just a smidge. I think I'll also need to drag out the horizontal side as well a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And then in the roundness option, I'm gonna round up the corner, you know, until they sort of touches each other. Really nice. Okay, you can spend as much time as you want, depending on how complex your shape is, but right now I'm just gonna use this. And also I'm gonna take the fill over here of the shape, do the color pick again from the original logo, and then enable the 3D back. I'm gonna put it behind my picture. And also to begin setting these up as 3D objects, I'm gonna engage the 3D option for both of these layers over here. And for the 3D back, I'm gonna hit P to turn up the position, and in here I'm just gonna push it back slightly into Z space. So I'm gonna just type in 0.01, and I'm gonna switch to this orbit around cursor. What? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna and I'm gonna rotate around the shape a little bit without touching the camera at all. Before you do all that, you need to switch from classic 3D render to Cinema 4D, and that's gonna help engaging the extrusion option for our shape layer. And here I'm gonna drop down the geometry option, and underneath there you're gonna find the extrusion depth. So now what you're gonna want to do is drag it out, maybe to like 200 pixels like that. Next, what I'm gonna do is create a new null object. I'm gonna call this 3D control. Also turn the null into 3D. Click on the null, hit P, and it's gonna turn up the position property. Now we're gonna want the position of the null to be in the center of the 3D object. In 2D space is already in the middle as default, but right now we're gonna need to put it in the middle of the object in D space. So what we did just back then was extruding the shape out to 200 pixels. So what we're gonna do now is pushing this out to 100 pixels. So that's gonna make sure the null stays in the middle of the object over here, and the rest is just, parenting these two shapes into that null. And now we have completed our 3D shape over here in After Effects. Kind of want to color this a different hue to make it easier to look. There we go, something like that. We're gonna mess with the lighting later. That shouldn't change too much of how the final object should look, but we can always go back and change it around. Right. Okay, I'm gonna re-enable. Wow. All right. Alright, so what I've just realized over here is that apparently the Cinema 4D renderer does not allow you to adjust blending mode between layers. So no matter, actually, what I'm just gonna do is just revert back to what I actually did in the promo video. This one I just went on to see if I can find a different route, but apparently not. What we're gonna do is take all of these layers over here and put them inside of a composition. Call them main 3D shape. 3D shape. This is actually better, I'm just gonna try and revert things back to where it was. So the grid layer over here, I'm just gonna disable the 3D option for it. And now, boom, my soft light blending mode has returned. Also, I kind of want to copy this PNG over here onto outside into the main comp, and also disable the 3D option for it as well. That's gonna be where we start out with the animation, and so we can begin to animate, which should be fun. We're gonna start out with this logo over here. Hit S to drop down the scale. I'm gonna drop it down to maybe over here 35%. Looking nice. And here in probably the 1 second mark, hit Control Shift D to cut it out into 2 parts. Just gonna delete this one and drag the main 3D shape over here. Also make sure it's the starting point of the 3D shape comp, which you can tell by a little marker on the top of the bar. Now we're gonna start to lay down some keyframes. So over here in the scale property, I'm gonna hit the stopwatch icon, put a keyframe on there, and in the one close to 1 second mark, I'm gonna drop it down to maybe 13 like that. Let's see how it looks. And then I'll highlight this keyframe over here, press F9 and jump into the graph. Make sure the speed goes down really quickly. I want it to sort of ease into the transformation a little bit, like that. That's looking really nice. And so over here at the 1 second mark, that's where the beginning of the 3D animation is gonna be. So I'm gonna drag the final keyframe over here of that animation down here. Maybe drag that. We're gonna need a little bit of space over here. Again, hit Control Shift D, cut that piece out, and Control X to cut it from the comp. And then over here in the main 3D shape comp, I'm gonna Control V to paste it back over here. And that's just gonna give us a sort of where to look in terms of trying to line up the 3D shape with the logo and the outside comp. So right now, what I'm gonna do is head over to Layer, create a new camera, and I'm gonna stick to the one node setup over here. And preset is gonna be 200 millimeters. And we're gonna try and base our 3D shape, which is the one on the outside over here, to the scale of this logo. I'm gonna head over here to the position option from the null control, and then drag it all the way up like that. That's gonna be where the starting point of the logo is. If you get to this point over here where, you know, the two edges just sort of blend to each other, just go to the effects and preset, head over to fill, take this fill effect over here and put it onto the PNG. And then, you know, it's got that clean border over there for you to guide your eyes onto. Should be where it's starting, right? Clicking over here to toggle the transparency of the comp, by the way. This little logo over here. And yeah, I think somewhere like this should be fine. That's good. Okay. So now going from this to this should be a pretty smooth feeling. Now that the 3D shape starts from that size, we can start to animate from there. So using the 3D control, I'm gonna keyframe the position, X, Y, and Z rotation. While selecting the null control over here, hit U to bring up all the keyframes. So starting from these position, I'm gonna drag it up to maybe half a second over here, maybe even more, and drag the position inwards. So I kind of want to try and get the logo to, get the object to hit the screen at really fast speed. So maybe around here, press F9 and then drag that speed in. Still a bit too slow for my taste. Let's see how that looks on the outside. Yeah, still a bit slow. I might want to get it to go a little bit quicker, so I'm going to drag the speed graph in a little bit more. Right, so next I kind of want the object to, you know, finish by drifting slightly into the screen a little bit more. You know, for example, maybe it's in a vacuum space and there's no gravity. So over here at roughly 5 seconds, I'm going to drag the parameter down maybe to -300 over here, and I'm gonna jump into the graph editor over here. And you know what we're gonna do is trying to make sure this line over here doesn't reach 0, which is like a 0 value of speed. When the object gets to this keyframe, it's gonna stop for a little bit before it continues to drift into the screen, and we don't want that. So we're gonna try and lift this line over here up a little bit. Also, we kind of don't want this to ease in so much at the end over here, so I'll make sure to drag this in as well. And also make sure that this is a smooth line coming into this object. Now let's watch it back again. There we go. We got our slight drift into the screen, which is what we're looking for. I'm just gonna drag this in a little bit more and just further finessing the speed line. Right, next we're gonna move on to the rotation parameters. Actually, if you remember in the original animation that we had, the logo actually comes up and then rotate a few times horizontally before it lands in the screen. So yeah, we're gonna try and mimic that using the Y rotation. Right, so dragging the timeline indicator to the position where the logo sort of lands in the screen. I'm gonna drag the Y rotation to the left over here for maybe 1 or 2 rolls. Let's try 2 first and see how it looks. Press F9 while on this keyframe, jump into the graph editor and boom, drag it in and see how it goes. I think that's a little bit too much. I'm gonna take it, maybe just take it down to only 1 roll. Number -2 over here, I'm gonna take that down to only -1 and see how that looks. Yeah, it looked cleaner, not cleaner, but that roll is way more decipherable. And I'm gonna offset the finishing of the rotation to the finishing of the position. Also, I'm gonna make sure the Y rotation here gets the same treatment as the position. So over here, down here, gonna make sure it drifts a little bit as well, like that, to maybe -45. Same goes with the X rotation over here. At this position, I kind of want it to be offset a little bit, so it's kind of tilted upwards like that. Again, F9. Drag that speed in, make sure it speeds up at the beginning, and offset it by a little bit, also a little bit to the Y rotation as well. Same goes for the Z rotation. Just gonna have the finishing position be a little bit like this, so you know. Also press F9 and then drag the speed in like that, then maybe offset it to the furthest. The next few steps consist of me giving the rotation some extra movement at the end to ensure a little bit of drifting to the screen, like I did with the position. And just like with the position, in the graph editor, I tried to make sure that the speed lines connect smoothly from one state to the other. And that's what happens when it touches the 0 line and goes negative. Yeah, so you know, make sure it doesn't go beyond that 0 line. Maybe just ease up on the on the curve a little bit here. If you drag this all the way to the end, it should be like a smooth descent or like a smooth ascent to the final position over here. There should be no curvature in the speed line. And now it's all down to adjusting how these parameters look. I kind of think that this logo over here, it's kind of hiding a little bit too much of the actual icon before it rotates away. So I'm just gonna adjust the rotation a little bit, maybe just have it end up over here. And as for the X rotation, I'm gonna drop it down a little bit like that, so that actually I'm not gonna offset these keyframes way too drastic. I'm just gonna line them up together. Okay, cool. And let's watch it back. In the outside comp over here, I'm gonna adjust a few things. The grid layer over here, I kind of wanted to scale down a little bit. I'm just gonna keyframe this corner parameter over here. So right here, I can see this square, trying to make sure it's sort of attached to this edge over here of the logo. As it's shrinking down right here, I'm gonna take this value down. I'm gonna drop it down even more, 1592 over here, and copy that value. Paste it on O2 over here, and also press F9 for this keyframe, trying to match the two speed curves of these properties as much as possible. This one over here seems like it's gradually speeding up over here, so I'm gonna mimic that over here as well. And it seems like the curve over here reaches the peak on to the left of the time indicator, so I'm gonna drag this back over here, yeah, and try to mimic that result. We can try making the grid sort of drift as well. Click onto this value over here, maybe -20. That's good. And also this one, put a -20 on it as well. Just trying to make sure these two values over here are equal. I'm gonna do a +10 on this, making sure we don't have such a drastic drift away. I don't want to take the attention away too much from the main object. And that's good. That's good enough. Wow. Now we get to the part where we get to put design into motion design. So now I'm gonna start off with over here the main PNG footage. I'm gonna pre-compose it, but while doing that, I'm gonna click on the leave all attributes in the original comp. And what that does is that it's gonna put our PNG file into its own comp, while on the outside, the comp is gonna retain all the settings that we had for that layer, including the 3D option and also what it is parented to. So what I'm gonna do is head over to this layer, right click on it, and do a little bit of adjustment to the layer style. Put on a little bit of inner shadows, make sure it's in overlay, drag the distance out, maybe still a little bit too harsh on it. You know, these shadows and highlights, they don't really necessarily have to make sense. It's just something that, you know, try to make it look as interesting as possible in this case. That's looking good. I'm also gonna add in a little bit of a bevel and emboss. First thing first, I'm gonna drag up the size and change the angle to make sure the highlight stays somewhere on the top right over here like that. I won't bore you with the details, but here are my final figures for the bevel and emboss. You know, make sure to adjust it based on how complex your object is looking, but this is what is working for me. What is important is make sure to keep the highlight blending mode as a color dodge. That's gonna give us a pretty, you know, pretty obvious, pretty techie vibe going on for the highlight. Bam. Okay, now we come to the part where we start to add some custom After Effects lighting into the scene like this. Head it over to the layer and create some new lights. For this example, I'm just gonna use point lights. White intensity all works. Hit OK, and then I'm gonna drag this one to the top over here. Let's drag the scene out to where it's sort of finished. Drag it up to the top left. Hit T to bring up the intensity. I'm gonna bring this out right here. Try giving it a sort of a highlight, soft highlight over here. Duplicate that point light, drag it to this side, to the right, and drag it out into the Z space so we just get slightly like a hint of it on the right over here. Oh, it gets slightly darker. Okay, gonna drag it out like that. How about that? Also bringing the intensity up a little bit. That's some smooth light. Okay, there we go. We got some light on that end. This one actually we can bring it down a smidge, just a little. That nice. I want to bring out a little bit of that nice purple over here. But then duplicate this point light over here. Last one. Gonna bring it down so that we get some of that light at the bottom. Ooh, I love this part. It's like therapeutic. Maybe the bottom light doesn't have to be as harsh. You can actually drag it down to even 67. So sticking with the topic of lightings, as you can see over here, the first frame and the logo is sort of overblown because of all the, you know, all the lights pointing its way. So what I'm gonna do is just sort of drop the intensity of all the lights down a little bit. So I'm gonna keyframe all of these values and I'm gonna drag them to the point where, you know, the logo sort of finish its movement. And at the beginning over here, drop all the lights down to a more, you know, a more reasonable amount, so that the logo over here sort of resembles what the other logo in the main comp ends up with. It's maybe only a couple of frames, but you know, if we leave it to be so overblown at the first few seconds, it's gonna be way more noticeable than having them sort of blend in like this so that they can transit smoothly between one another. Next up, if you see in the video, over here in the middle part, there appears to be some flickering edge lights going on over here, and you know, I was inspired by how the edges of the 3D box over here looks, so I tried to create that, but you know, using 3D shape layers. So we're gonna try and replicate that. I'm gonna click over here, go to layer, create a new shape layer, and I'm gonna use the rectangle tool. Just gonna double click on that, on the shape, and then I'm gonna change the fill to a full white. Drop down the rectangle path unclick the constraint proportions and drop the size of this down maybe like 10 and activate the 3D layer for this specific stick. I'm gonna take a look at what the rotational properties of the nulls are looking like, duplicate that into the rotation over here. So this one goes minus 30.2, this one is minus 26, and this one over here is minus 28. So this stick right now has the exact rotational properties of the shape over here. I'm gonna drag this stick upwards to where, you know, it can get sort of outside of the bound of the shape, should be right there. And then I'm gonna drag the x-axis to the edge of this shape, it should be right there. Okay, drop down the rectangle path. I'm gonna make it a little bit thinner, maybe half of this value, and drag it down from the middle like that. Maybe drag the position down as well. And then what I'm going to do is parent this to the 3D control null. And then finally we can see that the stick has stuck to the shape. But right now I think the stick should be somewhere around here based on the outline of the 3D shapes. I'm going to drag it out to that side. There we go. This is really helpful, by the way, the PNG outlines. Go ahead, click on this, open T, and then I'm gonna drag the boundaries of this layer in. Start somewhere around here, hit the keyframe, opacity 100, hit page down to move up a frame, drag this down. What I'm doing right now is making a glitch effect, so I'm gonna fluctuate the opacity amount a little bit. So then 51, then it's gonna end up here at 100. So we get a flickering neon light when it comes up. And then over here, it's gonna do the same thing and flicker away. So I'm gonna copy this setup of keyframes over here, copy it to this side of the end keyframe over here, Control Shift D layer to cut it off. There we go. Next, I just went on and duplicated this one stick to the other corners of the 3D object. Using various parameters such as copying the size of the shape into the position as well as rotating them around the axis. What I would suggest using is a script that's called move anchor point over here. Basically, you can use that script to move your anchor point down to these various areas, and what I would do is click on this to move your anchor point to the bottom, and then drop the rotation value and rotate it 90-degree clockwise, or just click on the amount and hit plus 90. For the smaller ones going out into the space, I rotated them using the rotation tool and made sure they're not affected by any lights by turning off the light receiving option as well as bringing up the diffusion up to maximum. Finally, I offsetted the appearance of each of the stick in no particular order in order to ensure a more randomized and interesting display. I love this stuff. I love doing glitches. And finally, we get to the part where we add in some window dressing elements. A little bit of a light ray behind the logo animation. So how I achieved that was, using a simple shape layer. Draw like a small edge light, just tracing around the logo a little bit. I just give it the color of this light purple inside of the logo, and then I parent that with the original picture of the logo. So then when it scales down, the element behind also scales down as well. And I'm gonna give that element a little bit of a glow. Actually, I'm gonna give it two glows actually. One is this edge, little small edge over here behind, and then I'm gonna duplicate that. I'm gonna give it a second glow that is gonna be lighter and spans out in a wider area. And then I'm gonna give it a little bit of a fastbox blur and then put it on top of every single one of the glow and just blur it out really lightly, and then give it sort of a fascinating blending mode. This looks fun, but it's not giving me much right now. Something like that. Gonna drop the threshold a little bit more. Try and put some over here as well. There we go, something like that. I'm gonna animate that so that it becomes sort of a light ray effect that spans out. So I'm gonna drop it down to the path option over here, keyframe that path option, and then at the next view frame, I'm gonna draw it out so that it looks like a ray being shot out, like there's something like that. And then also obviously F9 that, put it down over here so that it speeds up drastically, boom, like that. And then while it's doing that, it's also gonna fade away. So down to transform, keyframe the opacity, and over here I'm gonna pull it down to 0. Might as well pull this keyframe over here further out this side. Nice. And then I also want to blur it up a little bit more as it is going away. Put a keyframe on the blur radius, and then at the end over here, turn the blur way up like that. Still keeping a little bit of that cylindrical shape, so I'm gonna try and make them some sharper edges by adjusting the shape of the path. There we go. And yeah, just a little couple of maybe motion elements, like something like a star over here. I'm gonna double click on the star, and what I'm gonna do is turn the polystar onto a 4 points arrangement over here. Drag the inner roundness in, drag the inner radius in as well, and then navigate to the transform effect. Skew it a little bit like that, and then rotate it. I really like this style. I think this is one of the best simple motion language, which is like a simple twinkling star shape. I'm gonna put it in the center over here, and I'm gonna animate it out, drag the star in, put a keyframe onto the position in the next few frames over here, put it out this side. And also, you know, make sure jump into the speed grab and drag the speed in as well. Have it ease in over here. Have it fade out using the opacity property. Man, I'm losing my voice. And yeah, actually I can actually give it a little bit more time. Oh, what the hell? Just give it a deep glow. Oh my god, look at that. It just looks nice. It looks way nicer. There we go. And then I'm gonna call this twinkling star. Duplicate that and hit U to reveal all the keyframe. And then for this one, I'm just gonna set the final position to be somewhere around here on the opposite side of the composition, so I can have them fly out into opposite sides. Gonna make it look like it's, you know, it's being shot out using some sort of magical force. I love that. I think we can move on to some final touches. Usually I just put a new adjustment layer on top of everything and add in a chromatic. Oh, sorry. Yeah, for this one I'm gonna use the one coming from Sapphire. Just gonna slap like a little bit of a chroma effect on top of everything, looking nice, especially for these, you know, these white sticks over here. When they're full on white like that, when you separate out all the color, all the dimensions, it looks really cool. And then for the final touches, grains. Add in a simple grain. For the viewing mode, you can change it from preview to final output, and there's a tons of presets of grains you can use. Actually like the Kodak Vision 250D over here, especially when it's mixed in with the blue. I think it's coming out really nice. And look at how it's mixing with the glow. My god. So yeah, this is our final result for the video. I actually like this final product a lot. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hope it has been fun to watch. Not usually the case for tutorials anyway. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful Christmas, happy holidays wherever you are. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the new year. Bye bye.